Ran, just want to know, like, Akshar Patel being the vice captain. Normally, we see captains and vice captains are indispensable part of playing 11. Akshar's matchups against left-handers has been pretty good. If we look at the bilaterals, so what was the logic of not having Akshar today and having Washington Sundar? If you could just give us a sense.
Yeah, we spent so much time deliberating about the 11, the last couple of days, and I guess the only way that it sort of didn't play into our hands is if we did have the ideal start like we did today with getting Quinton and Rickleton out so early. You know, we were kind of looking at matchups more in the middle, and then obviously someone has to give way. So, do we leave a batter out and get another bowler in? In hindsight, that looks like the right decision. Obviously playing it forward and making decisions at the time, we felt we needed Rinku, as an eighth batsman, so to speak. And the decision was based around there. But certainly it's not to take anything away from Axar and his leadership and how important he is to the team. But like we face almost every week to try squeeze 11 places into 15, we're finding tricky, and we need to make sure we get that spot on for the next two Super 8 games.
Ryan, quite a bruising loss this to India. Wasn't not many expected this. Where does it leave your team now going forward?
Very disappointed in the performance. But when you set out to win a World Cup, don't expect someone to come deliver the World Cup to you on halfway through the competition. So we understand we've made a lot of mistakes tonight. We understand you probably allowed one mess up in this phase of the competition, and we've messed up on a grand scale, and now the onus is on this group of guys to turn around and put in two solid performances against Zimbabwe and West Indies. Obviously with the way the group goes, you need at least 4 points to get through now, and it's going to need two big performances and a big bounce back from everyone involved.
Tendo, Washi plays for the local IPL franchisee, and he was not a regular for his team. Actually, he did not even play he played only 1/3 of the IPL games for Gujarat Titans. In that context, how do you analyze the Washington selection, or you won't consider IPL performance or as any reckoner?
I don't think that's necessarily relevant. You got to look up the makeup of his IPL team. We know what Washi's done while he's been with the Indian team, and we judge him on that. And a big part of the strategy today was how well he bowled in the T20 when he bowled in the power play, and that was obviously a big part of the strategy today, going with 3 out-and-out bowlers plus Washi, and two guys making up the fifth bowler. Winning that power play was going to be super important, and we more envisaged him bowling 2 overs in the power play, not knowing that they were going to be 30 for 3. And then obviously it gives you the luxury of slotting somewhere in the order with the bat as well. So on balance, that was the decision, and given the fact that we thought the majority of the threat was going to come from the left-handers, and like I said, we wanted to play the extra batter, so it left us with one choice between Washington and Axar, and today we chose to go with Washi.
Tendo, hi. When this team was being put to defend the World Cup, there's obviously a lot of emphasis on left-handers, a lot of emphasis on left-handers up top. Today, 3 left-handers, all of them dismissed in the power play. Again, South Africa opening with an off-spinner. Will this team management and leadership group have a talk about bringing back somebody like a Sanju Samson just to break that top?
Yeah, of course we have. And look, in the 5 outings we've had now, 4 teams have opened with part-time off-spin, and it's got a wicket every time, apart from the USA game where we lost Abby without score in any case. So, to start every innings 0 for 1, I think it's literally been 0 or a couple of runs for 1 every time, is obviously putting pressure on the link players. Tilak and Sky, their role is to link up with the guys at the back end, and it hasn't gone that way. And look, there's a lot of inexperience in the team, and you want a settled team. These guys have done it all before. They're all fantastic players. So, do you stick or twist? Do you stick with the guys who we feel have performed really well over the last 18 months and who are maybe shy of a few runs now? Or do we twist and bring Sanju, who's also a fantastic player and obviously helps with tactically with having a right-hander at the top of the order? And I'm sure that'll be a talking point over the next few days going into these two very important games.
Ryan, we didn't get to see much of Abhishek in the first 4 games, first 3 matches that he batted, but he did bat today, and it looked like he was desperate for just the hacking at the ball. And there seems to be an obvious problem there, and with Rinku, who's also not doing much down the order. So, how much of a concern is that you don't have too many backup batting options, specialist batting options in the side?
It is a concern. The bulk of the runs are coming from the. Surya's been obviously very good, and obviously Shivan's been very good. And like I say, you've got 4 quality players there who haven't delivered so far in this, or up to this point in the competition. I certainly won't make excuses for Abby or Tilak. They don't need excuses made for them. But I think Abby's preparation coming into the World Cup with the food poisoning that he had at one stage has obviously hampered his progress in terms of where we want him to be at this phase. You want him to be up and running and sort of confident in his swing and confident in his game plan. And when you score 3 zeros, that is going to start weighing on you. I saw some really good signs on Friday night in the net. I think I mentioned it in the presser then. But he looks a little bit short, and our job as the coaching staff is to pull that right. We've got 4 days to do that. Rinku, I think that number 7, 8 position has become incredibly tough in T20 cricket. You look where he walked in against Namibia, he's had to turn down the single 3 or 4 times. So yes, it looks like he scored 2 of 8 balls, whatever. And then he comes in a pretty hopeless situation again tonight, and he's opted to go for the boundary and try to get us as close as we can. And on a wicket that holds a little bit, that can happen. So he hasn't had the best opportunities, but that is the nature of the position as well. And we're at the phase now where it's only performances that are going to talk. There's no point talking about rhythm in nets or how guys are feeling or what they're not feeling. It's time to pull our sleeves up and get performances out of all the players. And like I just said there, that's the challenge for the staff along with the players now, to regroup and put in a big effort leading up to the next game against Zimbabwe.
Right. Just an extension of this Akshar and the Washington thing. How difficult is it to leave out a vice captain? You left out Shubman Gill. Obviously, you took a hard call here. You're telling your vice captains you're not good enough tactically or technically to play in big games, especially when Akshar has done well against this team in a World Cup final, batting at number 5, and telling him that Washington Sundar, who has not been established as a T20 batter, can do a better job at 5. How big a call was that?
I don't think it's as straightforward as that. Like I alluded to earlier, in our analysis, we thought the biggest threat was going to come from Quinton and Ryan Rickleton and David Miller. And when you can only choose one of the two, we thought someone who can bowl in the power play, like I mentioned, or Aksa obviously occasionally bowls in the power play, but we feel we've got Washi to a point where he's found a way of being effective in the power play. And he obviously didn't bowl in the power play tonight, so it looks like we've purely gone on who's going to bowl through the middle, in which case you would choose Aksa. But the strategy was around that. And I think in a tournament like this, you want or you expect all players to understand that with the best intentions, we're trying to pick the best 11 to win the game. And I hope Aksa takes in the same spirit as well. Yeah, again, I think if either of them had played it, it would have been the same role. If we're a couple down, we've tended to use those guys as a sort of standard operating procedure where you try extend the link before you get to Hardik and Shivam. And if Aksa had played in that team today, he would have walked in the same position at whatever we were, 20 for 3.
Ryan, when Team India gets back to the drawing board, what are the 3 big areas that you will look into right now?
Why does it have to be 3? Look, I've sort of banged the drum about it, but I think the biggest challenge to us is finding a way to play on wickets that are not typical to what we're playing on. And again tonight, to have that strangle on South Africa, 30 for 3, whatever they were, and then to sort of adopt a defensive bowling strategy. Again, I thought that was a missed trick where you sum up the conditions and you say, look, if you bang length on this pitch, it's pretty hard to score. And same with the bat. There was obviously a bit of hold in the wicket, and when you lose Ishan in the first over and you've got 3 quality seamers like they do, I think again it needs a little bit of assessment and application. And it's a fine line between, you know, pulling the reins and stopping guys from playing the way they play. But I think it's come to the point now where, you know, the intervention of saying, guys, there's different ways to go about a chase. So even setting a score, and like I say, we've spoken about it a lot, but we haven't implemented it across the board, and I think that's cost us in some of the performances with the bat so far.
Hazrat Ryan, you touched a little bit on you know, the batting approach, but it's not often we see an Indian side that kind of so tied down by a bowling attack. And South Africa have played here a lot, so they kind of know what to do, but they haven't played on a black soil pitch yet. What did you think their bowlers did that made it so difficult to score?
Yeah, I think they just held length really well. You know, certainly not to single anyone out, but the first boundary we conceded was to Rickleton. You know, was banged into the pitch at his right shoulder, and that looked like an easy scoring shot. And the second boundary was a full toss, and in between there wasn't much, which was an indication that if you held the pitch, we felt it was a little bit skiddy and a little bit stoppy, a little bit too paced for the seamers. And I thought South Africa did that very well. Obviously, Lungi's the point of difference there with the slower balls really full. Again, we've spent so much time this week on sort of planning for that, and you know, credit to him, despite all the planning and the game plans around that, he's certainly very deceptive and very difficult to execute against. But by and large, I thought the three seamers held their lengths really well, and you know, didn't allow us to free our arms and didn't allow us any easy boundaries, and that was probably the difference today between the two teams.
Yeah, right. India have had two bad top order collapses against USA and against South Africa today. And also you touched upon how India has been losing 1 wicket in the very first over in 3 games. So is it reaching a matter of concern now to the management with this wickets, losing a lot of wickets in the power play and at the early on itself?
Look, it's certainly not panic stations, and the sort of blueprint or the recipe so far for being successful is not the right word, but by being consistent with the batting, is that we have got out the blocks really quickly. And you know, Abby's obviously a point of difference, and so is Ishan now that he's come into the team. So, you know, if those guys bat for 6 overs, the score is going to be 70 plus, and you can do that on really good wickets. So, can we get them to temper the way they're playing and, you know, be a little bit smarter about their approach, or do we just let them go on the way they are, or do we bring in a right hand at the top as well and make a change somewhere in the middle? You know, those for me, those are the 3 options we have, and we'll be deliberating that in the next few days and putting our best 11 out to come Chennai in a couple of days.
Ryan, after the USA game, you told that our team has got the wake up and shake up call, and in this game we lost very poorly. But what was the conversation in dressing room? Did the 20 runs over during the last phase, which we gave away, there we lost the game, or the early wickets? What was the conversation with the players or inside the team management?
We haven't had a chance to talk to the players yet. I've been whisked across just straight away. But no, you want to be very careful when you're apportioning blame. So I'll go back to the things I said earlier, is assessing and a few key moments. You know, 2 no balls in an important game like this. If you do the maths now quickly, that's 14 runs, which is, you know, sort of 8% of the runs given away before you've even bowled the ball. And then look, with the last over, Hardik bowling with 4 fielders out is always going to be a challenge. So, you know, we did look at Bumrah bowling 20 and Hardik bowling 19. That could have been a tactical thing that we might have done. So I think it's all these small things put together, and as a group we'll take responsibility for that. And I think against good teams and at the pressure point of the tournament, unfortunately you have to get majority of those small decisions right, and we missed a few tonight.